Carl kicked off the mixer. We all had to introduce ourselves in turn, and I was the last. According to Carl, the three women were all secretaries. The other man besides Carl and me was a friend of Carl's from college, working at a fairly well-known company. Since Carl was still a grad student, he introduced himself with a smug look. "I'm a grad student at K College, and I'll be starting my job this fall. My employment is all set, so now I just have to have fun until graduation." K College is one of the top colleges with high academic standards. The beautiful secretaries were impressed, saying that's amazing, and Carl looked pleased. Then it was my turn to introduce myself. I really hated being there and wanted to leave, but I reluctantly opened my mouth to say something. "I'm Kevin Anderson. I'm a middle school friend of Carl. Nice to meet you," I said in a small, unenthusiastic voice. Immediately, Carl reacted, "Hey, didn't your last name change? You used to be Foster, right?" he asked me with wide eyes. "Well, it's fine. People have their reasons," I said, not wanting to explain. Carl continued, "You always say that. You're so secretive. We're friends, you can tell me anything." "No, we're not friends, just old classmates," I muttered to myself. Carl went on. "By the way, which high school did you end up going to? No one seems to know. I know your brother was smart. But you and your younger brother weren't so great, so I'm curious, but no one knows." Carl bluntly asked in front of everyone. When I stayed silent out of exasperation, he said, "Oh, sorry. I guess you might not want to admit you went to a low-ranking school. Or maybe you didn't go to high school at all and just have a middle school education. Well, if it's embarrassing, you don't have to say." His insensitive comment made me snap. "Carl, that's enough. Your insensitivity is really something." Carl got defensive. "I have a job offer from a famous company." "I'm not like you, a jobless guy," he said, looking down on me smugly. At that moment, the woman sitting in the center of the three beautiful secretaries spoke up. "Excuse me, I've been curious for a while, but are you the Kevin Anderson?" I was startled. "Oh, you know me. I guess working as a secretary at a big company, you might come across information," I replied. Carl, looking bewildered, said, "What are you talking about? Kevin is my old classmate Kevin, the low-educated jobless guy. What else could he be?" The same secretary responded to Carl. "Wait. You don't know who this is?" The other two secretaries exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. "Yes, that's what I thought. I thought so too." The woman on the left said to Carl, "Even though you're a grad student at a good college, you seem quite naive about the world." The woman on the right added, "Looking down on a classmate like that and not even knowing who he is, I question your character." Carl turned pale and stammered, "You guys are quite harsh." Even Carl's friend chimed in, "I'm also put off by your behavior, Carl. Being so rude without knowing about Kevin is unacceptable." "What?" Feeling left out, Carl pulled out his phone and started searching my name. "My name is Kevin. I was born and raised as the middle child of three boys in a small rural town. My brothers and I were 2 years apart, the eldest was Marcus, and the youngest was Eric. My father always told us, education is everything. Go to a school with high standards, since we were young. When Marcus entered elementary school, he excelled academically, bringing home perfect scores on tests. Seeing this, my father thought, this kid has potential, and sent him to supplemental classes. It was a small town. So Marcus quickly became known for his top grades. Marcus earned the reputation of being the smart kid in town. Proud of this, my father constantly told Eric and me to become as excellent as Marcus. However, neither Eric nor I managed to bring home perfect test scores in elementary school like Marcus did. As for me, my academic performance was average. I could keep up with my school lessons, but I couldn't consistently get perfect scores. As for my younger brother, he was terrible at studying. He hated sitting still at a desk and loved physical activity, so he excelled in PE. He was also bright and charming, making him popular in class. I was average in both academics and sports and not particularly good at socializing. So I envied Eric for his other abilities even if he wasn't great at studying. I even told him once, "Eric, you're lucky. You got chosen for the relay at the sports festival, right? My friend's sister said you looked cool. This happened when I was in 3rd grade, so Eric must have been in 1st grade. I remember Eric, who was straightforward and cute back then, blushing and smiling with joy when I complimented him. However, my father's values were completely different from mine, and he gradually became more critical of Eric. Kevin and Eric, why can't you get good grades like Marcus? You're brothers, so why can't you achieve the same? We're not financially well off. But we're straining to send you to the same supplemental classes as Marcus. Improve your grades and repay me. Our father said this to us when we were in elementary school. He also said, Eric's grades are especially terrible. Being a fast runner is useless. You're as good as a failure. Instead of running, sit at your desk and study. He often said such things to Eric, who was still in the lower grades of elementary school. Because of this, Eric, who used to be bright and cheerful, gradually became quieter and more withdrawn at home. My mother, worried about Eric, asked my father not to push him so hard, but my father was stubborn and wouldn't listen. Marcus was top of his class in middle school. He graduated as the valedictorian and went on to one of the top high schools in the state. I was average at everything. My mother used to tell me, Kevin, you're fine just as you are, but when I entered middle school, Marcus was in his 3rd year there. So we were inevitably compared, making me feel uncomfortable. Your brother is famous for being the top student in his grade. It's a shame you're not the same. Carl, who was my classmate, often said to me. And as if by bad luck, my 7th grade homeroom teacher, Mr. Young, had been Marcus's homeroom teacher the previous year and said, Kevin, with your brother being so brilliant, you could aim higher if you tried harder. I thought, my brother is my brother, feeling out of place with those words. But I was so frustrated that I studied hard to prove myself on the next test. As a result, my grades improved slightly on the next test. Mr. Young praised me, saying, see, you can do it if you try. In hindsight, I think Mr. Young used my brother as an example to motivate me, applying pressure. So, his approach might not have been entirely wrong. However, even when praised by my teacher, I wasn't happy and felt it was pointless. When Marcus entered high school and I moved up to 8th grade, I stopped putting effort into studying. From 8th grade, I didn't study at all, and my grades plummeted. This eventually reached my father's ears, and he lectured me night after night. I thought you were capable if you tried, unlike Eric. Why are your grades so bad? Are you taking life lightly? But no matter how my father scolded me, I wasn't affected being in the throes of adolescence. In elementary school, when my father scolded me, I would reflect and try harder, but I was no longer at that age. I had decided not to study, and my grades continued to fall. Thus, my image of being average at everything turned into a poor student. Even so, I had a crush on a girl in my class, but being an unremarkable character. I didn't have the courage to confess my feelings and ended my middle school years with my feelings hidden. Looking back now as an adult, I think that parents have their own reasons and values, and each family is different. Reflecting on my life up to middle school, it wasn't particularly bright, but I managed to grow up, thanks to my parents. Although my family was often compared, and we were swayed by my father's values, I now see it as just a page in my life story. And now I'm 26. Rounding up, I'll be 30 soon. On the eve of my birthday, I found myself feeling sentimental. When I got home from work, my mother called. Hello? She didn't call often, so I wondered why and answered the phone. Hi, Kevin? Happy birthday, she said. I replied, it's not today. My birthday is tomorrow, chuckling at my mother's mistake. Well, with 3 sons, it's understandable if she mixes up one of our birthdays. But my mother quickly corrected me, I know. How could I forget my child's birthday? I went through a lot to have all 3 of you. She firmly denied the misunderstanding. No, I called because I got a letter to you. And since your birthday is tomorrow, I thought I'd say it a day early. That's what my mother said. A letter? I repeated, and my mother replied, yes, an invitation to a middle school reunion came for you. I said, I see. Well, I have no intention of going, so you can just throw it away, and hung up. The next night, I received a call from an unknown number on my phone. Feeling suspicious, I answered the call, and a male voice came through. "Hey, Kevin? It's me, Carl. How are you?" Memories I had forgotten came flooding back. Carl, a classmate from middle school. But instead of feeling warm nostalgia, I remembered I never liked Carl much, and my mood soured. "Oh, Carl. Long time no see. How have you been?" I replied in a low, small voice. Then a question popped into my head. "How did you get my phone number?" I asked Carl. He responded, "I got it from your mom yesterday. She gave it to me." I was utterly confused, so I asked for more details. "Why would my mom contact you?" Carl explained. "I'm the organizer for our middle school reunion. If I don't have current contact info, I sent a letter to their home. Your mom called me after seeing my number in the letter." I started to understand. "So, because I said I wasn't going to the reunion, my mom decided to call you to let you know?" Carl confirmed, "Exactly. And since it was a good chance, I thought I'd get in touch with you and got your number then." Before Carl finished speaking, I chuckled to myself. "Mom, don't just give out my contact info," I thought. But to my mom, Carl was my son's friend, so she probably saw him as almost family. It made sense she'd give out my number out of nostalgia. "So, I get that you're not coming to the reunion, but your mom mentioned you're living in New York now." "I'm in New York too. So I thought we could meet up." "Not a big reunion, just a small get-together," Carl said. "Mom, please stop leaking my personal info to old classmates," I muttered internally. But again, I understood why she did it. Ignoring my half-hearted responses, Carl continued. "So, how about tomorrow night? A few of us are going out for drinks. You should come." I asked, "Who's coming?" But Carl replied, "Don't worry about it. It'll be a surprise. Meet us at 7 p.m. in West Village. I'll send the details in a text. See you." And hung up. Immediately, a message with the venue details was sent to my phone. West Village? A fancy place for a classmate gathering, I thought, feeling uneasy. But sending a message to decline felt too bothersome, so I decided to go, thinking it wouldn't hurt to show up once. The next evening, I arrived at the designated place, and Carl came out to meet me. "Hey, Kevin. It's been so long. Great to see you. This way." Carl led me to the table, where one unknown man and 3 unknown women were seated. "Wait, wasn't this supposed to be a small classmate gathering?" I asked Carl, surprised. "Huh? Did I say that?" "I just said a small get-together, not that it was with classmates." Carl replied, equally surprised. Realizing there had been a misunderstanding, I resigned myself to the situation. "Then, what is this gathering?" I had a hunch. And Carl confirmed it with his answer. "Well, it's a mixer. There are 3 guys and 3 girls, isn't it obvious? We needed one more guy, so I asked you to come." I felt a wave of disappointment. If I had known it was a mixer, I would have refused. I regretted not confirming beforehand. "You should have told me." I mumbled, but Carl didn't seem to hear and whispered to me, "Aren't they all beautiful? They're all secretaries at top companies. Do you do these mixers often?" I replied. Carl, looking proud, said, "Yeah, pretty often." Resigned, I politely smiled to them and reluctantly took a seat. "All right, now that everyone is here, let's get started." Carl kicked off the mixer. We all had to introduce ourselves in turn, and I was the last. According to Carl, the 3 women were all secretaries. The other man besides Carl and me was a friend of Carl's from college, working at a fairly well-known company. Since Carl was still a grad student, he introduced himself with a smug look, "I'm a grad student at K College, and I'll be starting my job this fall. My employment is all set, so now I just have to have fun until graduation." K College is one of the top colleges with high academic standards. The beautiful secretaries were impressed, saying that's amazing, and Carl looked pleased. Then it was my turn to introduce myself. I really hated being there and wanted to leave, but I reluctantly opened my mouth to say something. "I'm Kevin Anderson. I'm a middle school friend of Carl. Nice to meet you, I said in a small, unenthusiastic voice. Immediately, Carl reacted, Hey. Didn't your last name change? You used to be Foster, right? He asked me with wide eyes. Well, it's fine. People have their reasons? I said, not wanting to explain. Carl continued, You always say that. You're so secretive. We're friends, you can tell me anything. No, we're not friends, just old classmates, I muttered to myself. Carl went on. By the way, which high school did you end up going to? No one seems to know. Your brother was smart. But you and your younger brother weren't so great, so I'm curious, but no one knows. Carl bluntly asked in front of everyone. When I stayed silent out of exasperation, he said, Oh, sorry. I guess you might not want to admit you went to a low-ranking school. Or maybe you didn't go to high school at all and just have a middle school education. Well, if it's embarrassing, you don't have to say. His insensitive comment made me snap, Carl, that's enough. Your insensitivity is really something. Carl got defensive, I have a job offer from a famous company. I'm not like you, a jobless guy, he said, looking down on me smugly. At that moment, the woman sitting in the center of the three beautiful secretaries spoke up. Excuse me, I've been curious for a while, but are you the Kevin Anderson? I was startled. Oh, you know me. I guess working as a secretary at a big company, you might come across information. I replied. Carl, looking bewildered, said, What are you talking about? Kevin is my old classmate Kevin, the low-educated jobless guy. What else could he be? The same secretary responded to Carl. Wait. You don't know who this is? The other two secretaries exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. Yes, that's what I thought. I thought so too. The woman on the left said to Carl, Even though you're a grad student at a good college, you seem quite naive about the world. The woman on the right added, Looking down on a classmate like that and not even knowing who he is, I question your character. Carl turned pale and stammered, You guys are quite harsh. Even Carl's friend chimed in, I'm also put off by your behavior, Carl. Being so rude without knowing about Kevin is unacceptable. What? Feeling left out, Carl pulled out his phone and started searching my name. No way. Kevin is famous. He succeeded in starting an IT company at a young age, is a regular on media shows, and is a big name. Carl read aloud the information displayed on his phone, then fell silent, staring in shock. Hey Carl, you might have good grades, but you're pretty clueless about the world. If you're going to join mixers with beautiful secretaries, you should probably know a bit about business and startups, said Carl's friend. Carl had no retort and remained quiet. After a moment, Carl snapped back and said to me, What the hell? The Kevin I knew had terrible grades, went to an unknown high school. It's natural to think you were a low-educated bum. How did you end up like this? Not wanting to go into detail, I tried to brush it off, it's not really worth explaining. But Carl's friend seemed to know my background and said, Kevin graduated from Cambridge, right, so I had no choice but to explain. Yes. I didn't want to go to high school, but I got a high school diploma through a correspondence course. Then, I thought I should at least go to college, but I wanted to break out of my zone. I researched a lot and decided to challenge myself by aiming for a famous college. Anyone can try if they want. When I said that, the beautiful secretaries exclaimed, That's amazing. But back in middle school, you didn't have the ability to succeed at such a challenge. Carl said, still in disbelief. Well, a lot has happened since then. I replied, not wanting to explain further in front of strangers and Carl. Realizing that being recognized as Kevin Anderson wasn't ideal for participating in a mixer. Especially without being informed beforehand, I decided to leave. I have a busy schedule, so I'll be heading out. Thank you for tonight, I said. Stood up and quietly paid for everyone's bill at the counter before leaving. A lot has happened in my life over the past few years. The truth is, I stopped trying hard in middle school and let my grades drop for my brother Eric's sake. We are 2 years apart. When I was in 9th grade, Eric was in 7th grade, and we attended the same middle school. I strongly didn't want Eric to feel the same miserable comparison I felt with our brother Marcus. Marcus was top of his class academically, and despite my average grades, I felt terrible being compared to him. Eric was struggling even more with school, and his grades were worse. I figured if I tried hard and improved my grades, Eric would be compared to me and feel bad, and our father would surely scold him again. So, I deliberately let my grades drop, hoping that if we both were seen as not good at studying, no one would pay much attention. And it worked. Eric, who had lost his confidence from constant comparisons, found his confidence again by excelling in sports during middle school. His bright personality returned, and he enjoyed his school life. As his older brother, I felt that was the best outcome. I believed I could catch up academically later. I had learned some tips for improving my grades when I tried in 7th grade. I became more interested in the UK education system, which emphasized graduation rather than entrance exams, and wanted to challenge myself with something more meaningful. I studied hard for admission to a UK college. When I was accepted to Cambridge, I couldn't believe it, but my life changed from there. The friends I made in college were motivating, and we helped each other grow. I started a business while still in college, and after graduation, I returned to the US, aiming to apply what I learned in college. My success in my career silenced my father's criticisms. In fact, he even started saying, "I regret comparing you to Marcus and scolding you all the time." I told him, "I don't mind, but you should apologize to Eric," whenever I had the chance. Eric had grown to dislike our father and had no contact with him. He was talented in sports and particularly loved soccer, which he continued to play. He excelled in high school soccer and got into college on a sports scholarship. Marcus had also started thinking like me and transferred to a college in another country. He enjoyed his life and decided to stay over there after graduation. No sign of him coming back to the US. The three of us brothers remained close, staying in touch regularly. Our mother had always opposed my father's harsh educational approach and eventually couldn't take it anymore. When Eric entered college, our parents divorced. We fully supported the divorce, wanting our mother to be happy away from our stubborn and selfish father. I don't know what happened after I left the mixer and wasn't interested, but I lost contact with Carl, and time passed. I had almost forgotten about Carl. About a year after the mixer, I finally registered my marriage with my girlfriend, and that day, my wife and I were out shopping in the city. My wife's name is Sierra. We'd been together since before I went to college in the UK, so during my college years, we had a long-distance relationship and couldn't see each other often, which made her feel lonely. I was also lonely at that time, but since it was my decision to go to the UK, now that we are married, I want to make up for it by making her as happy as possible. With my busy work schedule, it's rare for us to go out together on a day off like this. As we enjoyed our precious time together, happily browsing through the clothes she wanted to buy, I heard someone call my name from behind. "Kevin." I turned around and saw Carl. It was the first time seeing him since the mixer. "Carl, what a coincidence," I replied. Carl, who was a student back then, now had a more mature hairstyle, likely due to being a working adult. "Is she your girlfriend?" Carl asked, looking at Sierra standing next to me. "Actually, she's my wife." I felt a bit flustered. The reason for my fluster was, "Wait a minute. Your wife? No way. When did this happen?" Carl noticed. Sierra blushed and smiled. "Carl, it's been a while," Sierra said. "Yes, my wife Sierra was actually our classmate from middle school." "Really?" Carl was dumbfounded. He then muttered, "Kevin, you've gained so much that I envied without me knowing." I admit defeat. Complete defeat. I said, "There's no winning or losing in life." "You're not losing anything. As long as you live comparing yourself to others, you'll never be happy." I wanted to tell him that all we can do is try our best, but thinking Carl might not understand, I simply said, "See you," and left. That night, Carl called me. Feeling a bit annoyed, I answered, "Hey Kevin, I'm sorry. I realized today that I'd been arrogant. I looked down on you so much, and I was wrong." He apologized. Thinking it was a bit late for that, I replied, "It's fine." Then Carl suddenly started talking about our school days. Actually, I had a crush on Sierra since middle school. She was the girl every boy admired back then. I was acting all cool but was really insecure. So I never had the courage to confess or ask her out. So, it was just a one-sided crush. But in high school, I thought I had a chance. We both went to the same high school. Carl said. I already knew from Sierra that they went to the same high school. Carl continued. We were the only ones from our middle school who went to F High, so at first, I tried to talk to her whenever we passed each other in the hallways. I decided to confess during the school trip. But someone beat me to it. A guy confessed to her before I could. And he said she turned him down because she had a boyfriend. I was shocked. That boyfriend wasn't at our school. I quickly interjected. Yeah, that boyfriend was me. Carl was silent on the other end of the line. After a while, he spoke. You two have been together since back then and got married? How could someone like you, who was academically behind, end up with Sierra? I even organized the reunion hoping to see her, but she didn't come. Even if she had, she was your girlfriend. I was enrolled in a correspondence high school, so I worked part-time at a cafe during the day. Sierra started coming there regularly on weekdays, which was unusual since it was a school day. I found out she was struggling with her future and hesitant to go to school, so she was skipping a lot. We talked a lot, and I supported her until she felt ready to return to school. That's how we got close and started dating. I explained to Carl. I thought to myself that I had liked Sierra since middle school, but didn't say it out loud. Carl continued, I was forced to go to supplemental classes from elementary school, and my parents always told me I was no good. So I grew up with low self-esteem. I felt I needed high academic achievements to compensate. So I worked hard to improve my grades and got into a top college. I thought academic success was everything. And I looked down on anyone with lower grades. I was wrong. You were academically behind me back then. But now you have both academic success and fame. Yet you never looked down on me. Sierra chose you back then because of who you are. Not your grades. Only Sierra knows why she chose me. Life is about connections and timing. Hearing that Carl also lacked self-confidence due to his childhood family environment, I empathized and encouraged him, saying, You're someone who can reflect on yourself and move forward. You're amazing for being able to put in that effort. What's with the sudden compliment? It's weird, Carl said with a laugh. I laughed back. It seemed that, even though it was late, I could become good friends with him. I said to Carl, let's grab a drink sometime. Carl happily replied, sure thing.